Hello, I am Wale Udufalu, and I'll be sharing with you today some important tips for succeeding as a facilities manager. This is something that interests a lot of people because sometimes the facilities management profession can look a bit unwieldy. It is an umbrella profession that combines several different skills, professions, experiences, and trades. And so it's important that we give attention to those principles, those tips that can help us succeed. And that's what we'll be walking through today. Sit back and enjoy as we walk through the rest of the course. Now we're going to go through these important tips one after the other. And I'm going to start with the one I feel is the most important, and that is know your customer. As a facilities manager, you cannot just focus on the business of fixing equipment, making the place clean, making sure everything is neat and tidy. You have to know those whom you are providing this service to. You have to know those who are affected by the services that you provide. And when we are talking about customers, we have both internal customers and external customers. And then in discussing customers, we also have what you call your stakeholders. And these are people who are in one way or the other affected by the service that you provide. Remember that your output can be somebody else's input. And sometimes you need input from one other person to be able to deliver the kind of output that you require. So when we consider stakeholders, you consider your vendors, your supply chain, you have employees, you have the clients. Now, even when we are talking about clients, interestingly, we have them in different categories. So we have a client who is in some organizations called the contract owner. Now, this is the person who would be issuing you your purchase orders or signing the contract. This is the person who would be supervising the work that you do and ensuring that you comply with contract terms. You must know who your contract owner is. You also have the end users. They may not be involved directly in giving you the job or signing your contracts, but they are beneficiaries of your service. So if I were to walk into a bathroom and the bathroom is dirty, I am a customer who is not happy. So you want to pay attention to every category of customers and make sure that they are happy. Another category of customer may not be the contract owner. They may not necessarily be an end user, but they are involved in the decision making. If you have a residential apartment, for instance, and you have the owner of the apartment request for service, you may have to interface with his domestic staff. They are also customers, and guess what? They have a voice, because all they need to do is to tell the principal that you didn't do your job right, and he won't patronize you again. So it is important that you pay attention to every category of customer, give them the respect that they deserve, treat everyone specially, because you never know whose say is going to matter the most when you need the next job. And most importantly, get to find out their positions, their addresses, how to contact them, when you can reach them, what their level of influence is. Knowing this will help you a great deal in succeeding in facilities management. Another very important thing you want to keep in mind is knowing what your customer expectations are. Have you ever been in a situation where you got a gift from someone and you were really looking forward to open the gift, and then you opened the box and then there was an anticlimax because you didn't like what was in the box? Not that you were offended at the person, you were happy that you got a gift, but you were not happy that you got the kind of gift that you did. In other words, you weren't happy with the kind of gift you got. That's what happens when we provide service that does not match our customer expectations. So the customer has a definition of what quality means to them. You must understand this. You must document it. Some of these expectations are actually subjective and may be difficult to define. But by reason of use and over time, you are able to capture these correctly, and it is important that you do so that whichever member of the team is providing that service does so to the satisfaction and the expectation of the customer. What are some of the things that customers want? There's some basics which we all know. For instance, they want timely delivery of service. They want the exact specification of what they requested for. If I want my room painted fuchsia pink, I don't want to find it in baby pink. Yes, they're both pink, but my expectation is for a particular type of pink. And it is important as facilities managers that we know what those service levels are, we know what those specifications are, and we work to meet those specifications. Another thing that customers want is feedback. It's important that they know what is going on. Don't keep your customers in the dark. Even when it's bad news, it's better to tell them upfront. And we will talk about that later when it comes to communication. Take some time to find out, study your customers, know over time what do they want, articulate this, and then match your service levels to meet your customer expectations. It is also very important for you to know your facilities and know the scope of the services that you provide. Sometimes as facilities managers, we find ourselves on premises where there are multiple service providers. If a scope is not within your contract, then you really shouldn't be using your resources and your time to deliver that scope, except you are doing so knowingly as a measure of customer service. Now, when you know your facilities and you know the scope of your services, then you are able to provide the right level of services at the right time, speaking to the right equipment in the right place. One of the ways to do this very well is to have an asset register. When you first mobilize to a site, it is important that you get a record of all the different assets and equipment that exist on that site. You must have a map, a layout of what your site looks like. Where is wing A and where is wing B? What is floor 1 and what is floor 2? And understand where these different equipment are. For instance, I could be standing in front of a generator set that is X years old and has a manufacturer number 12345. Tomorrow morning, the very next day, that generating set can be replaced by something that looks exactly like it in form and fashion, but it is not the same generating set. So your asset register will help you not only document where what equipment is, what are the identification codes for those equipment, what is the state of the equipment, and knowing the state of the equipment also helps you to plan adequately. If you have a piece of equipment that has been on site for perhaps 10 years, you know what the useful life of that equipment is. You know that you need to give this more attention. It also helps you begin to plan even your replacement plan for that equipment. So knowing your facilities, knowing the services that you are meant to render also helps you to become successful. Sometimes we have services that are not so frequent. These could be annual, for instance. And if you don't have this in view, you could find yourself in a situation where a whole year goes past and you do not provide that service because it's not in view. And guess what? When it comes to payday, the customer is going to say, but you didn't do this. And they're going to check that off your bill and your payment, and you won't get paid for a service that you should have rendered, which if you had kept in view, you would have rendered and earned the revenue due to you for doing so. So you must have heard the saying, if you fail to plan, then you are actually planning to fail. And it's just as true in facilities management. Planning, planning, planning. Planning is everything. Well, not everything, but almost everything, and it's a good place to start. How do you plan? And there are different kinds of plans that we must have. First of all, you have a broad facilities management plan that speaks to how you are going to manage the assets and the facilities that you manage. And this can be a long-term plan, speaking to things like acquisition, management, and disposal. And then you have shorter-term plans regarding things like projects and different initiatives that you are taking. Now, when it comes to project management, you must have at the very beginning a plan that sees everything end to end. What resources do I need? Who is going to get involved in this service? Who's going to bring who's going to provide some input, and whose output does this become? Taking all of that into consideration from the very beginning helps you to avoid surprises and pitfalls along the way as you go. In your planning, you must also document, and you must take into consideration the different stakeholders who have a role to play. Who needs to be informed about this plan? Who needs to make some contribution into this plan? At what point should they be informed? At what point should they be communicated to? Another thing you need to know and bear in mind when you are planning is starting with the end in mind. One of the things I like to do when I'm going to go into a project is to walk through it mentally and try to think of the different things that could go wrong or that need to be addressed, and then begin to address them before we get to that point. And as you do so, your plan becomes more effective. And guess what? The more you plan, the better you plan, and you keep getting better at planning. And as you plan better, you get to execute rightly. And at the end of the day, you become a successful facilities manager. One thing that should never happen to you as a facilities manager is to find out that you have finished work, provided service, but that you were not compliant. That's a very dangerous place to be. As a facilities manager, one important tip for achieving success is to know very well what specifications and what standards your work must comply to. Now, these come from all sorts of levels, from government regulations right down to customer specifications and industry standards. So for instance, if I was doing electrical work, there are standards to which that electrical installation must be done. And if I am a facilities manager that came from a background that is not technical, it is important for me to find out what are these specifications that must be adhered to, what are these standards, and then these dovetail into the work instructions that you give to your team. You cannot rely only on experience of the people who are working with you. So someone says, I've been doing this forever, Mrs. Don't worry about it. That's not enough. You must know against what standards must we check this. So that if his experience or her experience doesn't comply with the standards to which you should be working, then you want to make those adjustments rightly. You also want to document your compliance to these standards and specifications, because sometimes you have checks from regulatory authorities and you must be able to demonstrate compliance. No matter how smooth running your facility is, you can get shut down in minutes for non-compliance, and you don't want to find yourself there. Keeping good records and maintaining good documents is a very important tip for achieving success in facilities management. Sometimes work has been done and has been done very well, but if you don't keep good records, how do your teams know that this has actually been done? How do they know where you started? How do they know where you stopped? How do they know what next needs to be done? It's important to have a good filing plan. Make your documents not only retrievable, but also accessible. It shouldn't take forever to find a document that you need to have. Someone said within 2 clicks of a button on your system, or within maximum 2 searches within your desk or your filing cabinet, you should be able to find a document. And the only way to do that is to have a proper filing plan that helps you to tag your documents rightly, label them rightly, ensure they're in the right place and stored properly. Other documents that you should have, for instance, are details of your customers, contact details, where to reach them, and what is the best way or time to reach them, and anything you need to take into consideration when you are reaching out to them. Other things that you must have well documented are policies, procedures, your standard operating procedures, your work instructions. You should have your work detailed to the point that someone can run with a document and produce the same result every time they use that document or checklist. And when you have good records, you are able to make good decisions. One record that is very good for you to keep as a facilities manager is pictures. You want to take pictures of before and after, because sometimes people forget. Especially when you have been there for a long while, they forget what the facilities look like before you started work. So you want to take pictures of what happened before you started work, and you want to take pictures of after. And by all means, when you are commissioning a project, take pictures, document them, have your information dated. This is very important. Even when you sign documents, remember to have dates behind them. Sometimes these things are called up and they're brought into context in decisions, sometimes as serious as lawsuits. When you have good documentation, you are able to defend your work, you are able to provide good service to your customer. And if you find yourself as a facility manager in the demand organization, you are able to support executive management with making good decisions just because you have good documentation and record keeping. Another thing you want to do is to integrate quality management systems into the work you do. You want to have good quality assurance and good quality control, ensuring that people do things right and you are able to stop them from going wrong at the point of execution if you need to. And then you also want to have an assurance system that does a backward check to ensure that things are being done the way that they should, in a manner that gives management the comfort that you will always produce the same level of results that they want you to. When you have a good quality management system, you then plan to have technical audits. Now, technical audit is a planned, deliberate action to review the work that you have done, to ensure that you are complying with what you have said you would do, because that's what quality management is about, isn't it? We say what we are going to do, we document what we say we are going to do what we say we are going to do, and then we check that we are doing what we say we would do. So that's your plan, do, check, and act. And in a good quality management system, there will be issues. Sometimes you have misalignment. So you want to have a system for corrective actions. And when you pick up non-conformances, things that do not align with the level of standards, with the processes that you have laid out, you want to be able to go back and get down to the root cause. Now, root cause analysis is very, very important, and you must be objective about this. Otherwise, you will not provide quality all of the time. When you are doing a root cause analysis, you want to get to the very bottom of why did this happen. So you're asking a series of why questions. So you find out that something went wrong, and the first response you get, for instance, is that somebody did it. Why did he do it? Was it because he was incompetent? Is it a behavioral issue? Is it something that has to do with attitude? Or is it because he didn't know or he wasn't informed? When you ask that question and you get the answer to that question, you go to the next question. Say, for instance, you find out that the person was incompetent. The next question is, why is this person incompetent? Or because he didn't go for the relevant trainings, perhaps. Or perhaps he was recruited wrongly. Then you go to the next why. Why do we have a recruitment error in the team? And then you go back to your HR processes. Remember, we're still talking facilities management, but it's all a circle. And everything that is done within the organization affects the quality of what you do in facilities management. So for you to be successful in facilities management, you must have a very good and robust quality management system that uses audits, uses corrective actions, takes lessons learned and put them back into the quality management process to ensure that you reduce and eliminate as much as possible the same errors that you had when work was done before. One very important thing, though, in your approach to instituting a quality management system, you must try not to be punitive, because when you do that, people tend to hide away the truth, and nobody wants to tell you why something really happened. But when they find out that the purpose of your root cause analysis is to stay on the subject of what went wrong and how it can be corrected, you will find everyone contributing to ensuring that things are done the way that they should and you achieve better quality all round. Sometimes things go wrong. Things we're not prepared to happen. What do you do? These are called emergencies. When you're in the middle of an emergency, it's not the right time to start planning. You must have had an emergency response plan before you get into the emergency. And this must not only be planned out, it must be communicated. If there is a fire in your facility today, do you know what to do? Do the occupants of your facility know what to do? Are they going to be running around helter-skelter? Do they know who is in charge, who to take instructions from? Do you know the emergency numbers that you should call? In every city, in every state, in every region, there are emergency numbers that you can call readily to access help from the regulatory authorities, from the relevant authorities who provide this. You must let these be within reach for everyone. This must be displayed within your facilities in a manner that in the event of an emergency, people don't have to run around to look for whom to call or where to get the number. Sometimes the emergency may not be at that level that is escalated to external authorities. It may just be something within the premises. Does everyone know who is in charge? So you need to articulate clearly for yourself and also communicate not only to your team, but to every occupant in the facility what the emergency response is. You must also have timelines for getting information about this. There's no use hearing about a fire 5 hours after it started. Your whole building has probably gone down. Immediately a fire starts, you should be notified. Sometimes you're not always on the facility 24/7. It really shouldn't be. But you should have the comfort of knowing that if something goes wrong within the next 30 minutes, 1 hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever the case may be, you should be notified and relevant parties should be notified. We talked earlier about customers and knowing your customers. You should also know within your stakeholder interface who should be notified when things go wrong within the facilities. You also have to be careful about this. It must be on a need-to-know basis. You don't want to be communicating panic to everyone who doesn't necessarily need to have that information. At the same time, those who need to have the information, who need to make decisions based on that information, should have that information readily from you. They should have it in a format that they can easily understand. If there is a fire, it should be clearly communicated that there is a fire. If there is an emergency, for instance, if it's a health emergency, I know in some climes people can be a bit superstitious about that, but if, for instance, you had a casualty on site, you don't want to be mincing words about how bad the situation is. If someone has broken a neck or broken a leg, it's not the time to be playing down the situation. You need to be able to communicate in a factual manner and say, this looks bad, but this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to address it. Finally, in an emergency situation, you need to be fully in charge. People must hear the confidence in your voice, and of course that comes from preparation. So they will follow your leadership because they see your level of preparedness for that situation. So you may wonder, will I always be prepared for every type of emergency? What if something comes up that I hadn't even thought about before or have never experienced before? Don't worry about it. As you follow the principles of emergency response management, you will do well. Be confident, follow the plan, carry your stakeholders along, communicate rightly, and make sure you address the root cause of the emergency, and you will be fine. Sometimes we have members of our team who are very good at what they do, but they are not considerate for others. And in doing so, they create unsafe conditions and unsafe acts. As a facilities manager, if you are going to be successful, you must pay a lot of attention to health and safety. It is important that you maintain a safe environment, that you do your work safely, and that you provide the assurance to everyone who is involved in what you do that they are safe. So you must have, first of all, a HSC plan. That's a health, safety, and environment plan that takes into consideration the peculiarities of your site and the services that you provide. Now, there are several of these in different places, but it never works to just copy and paste. You must know what services am I providing, what is the nature of work that I'm going to do, and what are the safety implications that we must consider in providing this work. If, for instance, you were going to do some hot work or welding, people need to know. The person who is doing the welding needs to be properly equipped. He needs to wear the right kind of personal protective equipment. Remember that it is not in all situations that you will have an immediate impact of the work that you do. But you don't want to find yourself 5 years later, 10 years later, meeting a colleague and finding out that they're in bad health because they didn't do the work that they should do safely. Also, we don't want to find ourselves in situations where we have our equipment working rightly, but we have created unsafe conditions. Some of these things could be as minor as leaving cable trailing all over the place. This is unsafe. In some climes, you find technicians who are prone to joining wires directly. This is very wrong. We talked about complying with standards and specifications earlier. There are also safety implications of that. And all of this must go into your safety plan. One very good thing that you must do and adopt as a habit is to have a daily toolbox talk with your team. Start of day, here we are. What's on our table? What are we going to do today? So this person is going to fix a door, another person is going to install a stair rail, another person is going to do some deep cleaning. What are the safety implications of these things? You share with your team. You look at the different possible hazards that could arise. Now, I'm going to be sharing with you some very important things that you should take into consideration when planning for your health, safety, and environment issues on your site. The first thing you want to note is that you must have a good job hazard analysis done for your site, your project, and all of the different types of work that you do that could present hazards. You want to have safe handling of chemicals procedure and what is known as a shock card, which details the kind of chemicals, the components of those chemicals, and how they should be handled. You must have daily toolbox meetings where at the beginning of the day, you and your team get together, discuss the work that should be done for the day, the safety implication of those jobs, and how to prevent accidents from happening. Have a monthly plan for your HSC meetings and ensure that the minutes of these meetings are well recorded. Have an annual plan for fire drills and ensure that you keep the reports of these fire drills. Also conduct periodic HSC audits and track closeout of the actions that arise from the audit. This is very important because it helps you to eliminate errors happening again and again. Ensure that you have the proper list and provision of personal protective equipment that you and your team members should have to get the work done. Also ensure that you have regular security reviews and that the reports of these security reviews are properly discussed with stakeholders at the relevant levels to prevent security incidents from happening. When you do these as a facilities manager, you will have a well-rounded plan for addressing your HSC issues, and this will contribute to your success as a facilities manager on site. The concept of management by walking around has become well accepted in many circles, and for so many reasons, because it has provided benefits both to the management team who are conducting the walk around and also to those who are being inspected on the walk arounds. Now, what this does for you is that it gives you a first-hand feel, a first-hand interaction with the equipment, with the facilities, with the people, and you get to know and see for yourself what exactly is going on. It's not good enough to sit behind a desk and get feedback from members of your team who are out there and tell you everything is A-OK. Sometimes these things are subject to their interpretation. They may only see to a certain extent, but you may see more by reason of your experience. Sometimes you want to also see for yourself and be able to observe not just the state of the equipment, but things around it that could become a problem later. For instance, you may observe that a certain meeting room is now being more frequently used by others than it was before. Your team members may not be able to report that to you in your regular weekly meetings, but by walking around, you get a hands-on feel of what exactly is going on. It helps you to proactively think of solutions ahead and to put this in place to ensure that the customer is always happy. Also, with your daily routine inspections, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to blind spots. Blind spots are places that you may not ordinarily see when you are just looking on the surface of things. So for instance, if you were inspecting a staircase, many people tend to overlook underneath the staircase, and there's usually a lot of grime and dirt there if it's not properly cleaned. Sometimes you have window sills, you have window ledges and door areas, crevices and corners, and these are things that on the surface may not be readily picked. But I tell you, you don't want to find yourself embarrassed the day executive management is walking around and then they point to an area that you should have seen because you didn't pay attention to it. It was a blind spot. So that's very important. And when you observe things, also document. Now, that's something we've been saying in every single tip that we have mentioned, the importance of documentation. Write down, take notes, take pictures of things that you observe so that you can build on the knowledge that you gain from your routine inspections. These must be planned, they must be done, they must be reported as being done, and this will help you be a successful facilities manager. Communication skills is one of the most important skills that a facilities manager can have. probably even rated higher than the technical skills that you would have. Because you can be an excellent engineer, but if you don't communicate rightly, you could upset the customer. You could misrepresent a situation. You could come across wrongly. And at the end of the day, all of the good work that you have done will go down the drain. Communication involves written communication, where you have to document and express to your customer either the state of things, inform them about work you are going to do, when it is going to be done, how it is going to be done. It could also be verbal, where you engage the customer physically in spoken communication. It can also be non-verbal, and that is also very important. Sometimes people read more into non-verbal communication than they do into actual verbal or written communication. Whichever way you are communicating, as a facilities manager, you must pay attention to what is the other person hearing or reading on the other side. It's not enough to have an intention. You must let your intention translate to the intended message. So if you start an email letting people know that, for instance, you're going to shut down the facilities because there has to be perhaps fumigation or some kind of disinfection or cleaning exercise, there must be enough information to know how that affects them. The information must come to them in a timely manner, except that it's an emergency. You don't want to be telling people about shutting down a facility 1 hour before you do so. That communicates insensitivity. It says that you are not standing in the shoes of the customer to understand what they may be involved in and what is at stake for them having to shut down the facility in an hour. And you don't want to come across that way. So you communicate what you are going to do, how you are going to do it. If, for instance, you are going into offices, you need to let people know what they should do. Perhaps keep your drawers locked. We will not be responsible for items that are left on the table. If you don't communicate that, someone said once that when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And we don't want to be dealing with asses in facilities management. We want to deal with empathetic people who care and who are professional in their service provision. Communication also involves you giving a full and well-rounded picture of what is going on. In some instances, you need to tell the whole story. And like we said earlier, it's important to know who should get what communication and when they should get it. If you're standing before the chief executive of an organization, he doesn't want to know where the nails and tacks are. He just wants to have a high-level summary of what is going wrong and what you're going to do to resolve the situation. When you get into too much level of detail, you are no longer communicating because he's no longer hearing you. You want to know what level of communication you should give to what level of person you are interfacing with. Again, you also need to know what type of communication should be written and what should be said verbally. For instance, there are some things that you want to, first of all, pick up the phone, call, explain the situation, and then document in an email. Sometimes when you send out an email on the surface or you write a letter without providing background, you may create a situation of misunderstanding that could very well have been avoided. So in your communication as a facilities manager, it is important to know these things. Of course, there are the basics like dotting your I's and crossing your T's. There are all sorts of aids that you can take advantage of to help you with things like spelling and grammar, because you don't want to come across as someone who doesn't know the right choice of words and the right way to frame your words when you are communicating to your customer. So communication is everything. And finally, when we talk about communication, it's important to communicate, whether it's good news, bad news, or ugly news. This is not one of those situations where they say no news is good news. You must tell the customer, you must tell your stakeholders what is going on a need-to-know basis. When everybody is informed, we take right decisions and we make the right progress together. As they say, no man is an island. For you to be a successful facilities manager, you must have the right networks. Keep a pool of resources that you can reach out to when you need help. If you need someone to share with you an experience they have been through before, or you need someone to share with you knowledge that you may not have ready access to, you must have a good network of resources from colleagues, from service providers, even customers, and the competition. You need to know what's going on. You benefit from all the knowledge that you get in your networks, and it will always make you a better person. Finally, and very importantly, you must invest in yourself. Knowledge yesterday is not the same or not as useful as knowledge today. And guess what? What you have tomorrow may make today's knowledge irrelevant. So you must always skill up, invest in yourself, develop yourself, take courses, just like you are doing now, take more courses, get to read materials, understudy. Sometimes you can even just take a chair, sit beside a technician, and watch him work. You learn so much more from even that practical exercise than you may learn from reading all the how-tos and how-not-tos. Skill up, particularly in the area of technology. There's a lot that's going on in the world out there right now. A lot of things are being automated. And the more these things are being automated, the more human intervention and human interface is being reduced. Don't find yourself in a position where your skills are no longer relevant to the organization in which you are providing facilities management. Technology makes things richer, faster, and better. And you always want to be on the winning side with technology. I'm really glad that we've been together on this journey discussing the important tips for success in facilities management. And you know what? You don't necessarily need to commit these to memory. What you just need to do is to internalize them and keep working them through in your daily work. Guess what? There will be some times that you have to pay more emphasis and more attention to some than the others. But as you do so, you identify for yourself your areas of strength and what areas you need to improve on. And as you continue to apply this, your level of success goes from one level to another. And we look forward to hearing from you. Please share with us your success stories. Thank you once again, and we look forward to having more and more courses with you here at Alpha Meet.